Hello and welcome to another episode of the ArenaCraft Podcast, a show dedicated exclusively to Magic the Gathering Arena. I'm Arjun, I'm one of your hosts. I'm joined today by CGB, recipient of the mundane intro this week. How are you doing, CGB?
Mundane intro? What do you think today is? Just another day? This is podcast day. And we've got the creator of the Arjuna Awards, Arjuna Perkins, here alongside the one in Best of One, and there needs to be intro. So there, I did it. I went for it this week.
You know, CGB, we should get you on these intros sometime. Why haven't I thought of this before?
Sounds like work.
Yeah, I know,
Sounds
right?
like work.
Yeah, that takes away from the jet set, show up, drop the mic lifestyle of the Covert Go Blue. However, there will be none of that happening today, as we have an exhaustive list of spoilers to read through for you. So, for those who haven't been listening lately, we are continuing our thing that we do every set, where we go through a list of the entire spoilers of the set, and we try to pull out the gems, those very most succulent cards, to talk about their potential use in Constructed. And Arjuna gets to pine over some limited cards as well.
That's a great description. The succulent gems might be a lot. Like, it's like you just said, we took all the purple jelly beans out of a bag, but we're gonna try all the other ones, baby.
Yes, indeed. Oh yeah. I mean, that's what limited is, right? You eat every last freaking jelly bean in the pack. So we're basically gonna jump right into that. Covert Go Blue, is there anything you want to say before we begin?
I think I would most like to say that new cards are the greatest thing ever.
They are, basically.
Just a reminder. Even if I hate on some of these cards and hate on the person who brings them up because they suck completely, the new cards are the greatest freaking feeling in Magic. And I just try to remember that every time I get one. So it's a little gift.
One thing I will say, I feel like I keep saying this with every set review, but it's so true with this set. I have absolutely no idea about some of these cards.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna just bash our ideas off each other and try to come to some consensus for the listeners. You know, we're gonna try to point them in the right direction.
This set might have more text, like more words per card, than any other Magic set I've ever looked at. So we're going to have fun with that. All right, well, we're jumping in where we left off. And the first card that we want to talk about today is Calamity Bearer. So that's 2 red for a 3/4 creature giant berserker at rare. If a giant source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So essentially what we have is like an Obosh, and instead of doubling it for odd mana permanents, it doubles it for giants instead. So, all right, we've seen from Obosh that this effect can be powerful. Now, when it's not your companion, it sees a much less play, but Obosh did actually show up in that spicy Teamer deck for a while there in Standard. So, what do you think, CGB? Is this card like just a meme, or could this make its way into a deck?
Meme.
Yeah, okay.
Meme. I'm mad that it's a 4-mana 3/4. If you're going to be a giant, like, make it a 4/5 or make it a 3/6, or just, like, the body's understated and it needs other cards to do stuff to be good.
I mean, it's like effectively a 6/4 though, right?
Sort of, except it dies to something that kills something of 3 power or less, if there's something like that in the format.
Yeah, definitely this is a card that will probably see either little or no play, but if it has some kind of a combo, then we might see it show up.
I'm still a card away from Giant Tribal being something worth trying. I think it will be good if Giant Tribal is, but I still need that giant.
Yep, totally. Maybe we'll discover it as we go on, but I agree with you. There are some very powerful giants, but no clinching giants yet. All right, Forging the Tyrite Sword. Read this for us, CGB.
1 red and a white for a saga. So Boros Saga. I'm sure this will be great. Boros is known for their game-breaking cards. Chapter 1, create a treasure token. Chapter 2, create a treasure token. Chapter 3, search your library for a card named Halvar, God of Battle, or an equipment card. Reveal it. Put it into your hand and shuffle your library. Halvar, the god of battle, was revealed much earlier. It feels like forever ago now, but it's a white 2 for the guy who gives equipped creatures double strike, is a 4/4, has a backside that is an equipment that returns something to your hand, etc., etc. So, what do we think of this card?
I'm having a hard time imagining this seeing play. It's very slow. You've got to be really, really, really in for Halvar or whatever equipment card you're searching up. So, I don't know. Like, someone's going to have to show me, like, a nice little sequence this fits into. Like, if the sequence is I figure out a pretty compelling way to win the game on the third saga, then, like, consistently win the game when the third chapter goes off, then maybe. But otherwise, this just seems like a limited card to me.
If somebody told you that you could have a 3-mana ramp 2 and draw a card, would you be interested?
In Boros, though, like...
Yeah. I mean, look... I've said it on my stream a bunch of times. The color pie is a lie now. Okay, now we're trying to bring. We're trying to. The color pie became the color lie. Key lie pie. Okay, and the forging the Tyrite sword is an introduction of card draw and ramp in one card, mind you, to Boros. The problem is you always draw Halvar, God of Battle, which is that better than the average card? Probably. But, I mean, you do need a deck that at least is going to use it in some way.
I mean, I like the idea of, like, always getting Embercleave.
Yes, that's true.
And one thing to note about this card is that running this card lessens the number of Halvars and or Embercleaves and or whatever else kind of nonsense you want to put in your deck. So... Yes. That's something, right? That's something. This is what I need to see for this card to be successful. I need a good curve, right? I need for someone to be able to lay out the cards and say my deck's consistently going to try to be like casting a 5-drop on turn 4. Or you know what I mean? Like I really need for the pieces to fit into place.
How about this? You play Forging the Tyrite Sword on turn 3, and you make a treasure token. On turn 4, you will make another treasure token, and you will have 4 mana. We can do whatever we want. Let's play Showdown of the Skalds. Why not? Let's exile 4 cards. On turn 5, let's play Goldspan Dragon, and have our treasures produce double mana, and have every spell we cast from the 4 that we exiled put +1/+1 counters on our dragon or whatever we played on turns 1 and 2.
I mean...
Am I getting into this a little? I mean, that's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah,
it's also Goldspan Dragon.
It's also very little board impact turns 1 through 4, basically, you know?
I mean, okay, that's true.
Yeah.
But how about that impact on turn 5? I'm just throwing out there, like maybe we can do more with the treasures, and maybe we can also make them make more mana. Maybe we can do more with the spells we play. I don't know. There's a lot going on.
I like your adventurous spirit with this card. I still think it's probably not going to show up, but you've at least got the wheels turning on it.
We should move on because there's so much adventurous spirit to go around.
Indeed. All right. So the next is a first card revealed in a cycle, which may not be good enough for standard. Some of them might be, though. And so I think that they're worth reading. And so the first one is called Bretogard Stronghold. This is a land. It ETBs taps for a green. You can pay green, white, tap and sacrifice Bretogard Stronghold. Put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control. They gain vigilance and lifelink until end of turn. Activate this ability only any time you could cast a sorcery. So this card wouldn't be bad if it were not a tap land.
Oh my god, yes.
Because here's the problem. This wants to go into some kind of like either aggro deck or some kind of maybe a tribal deck. And those decks typically want to like get creatures down turns 1 through 3. So that's the holdback I see with this card. I think some of these other ones in the cycle, which are tap lands, might fit better into their respective colors. But I just feel like this wants like small creatures and you want to be able to cast those on curve.
Just a bit of an aside that I think covers this and a lot of other cards. I think that the play design team at Wizards just doesn't have an aggro mage anymore.
Right, dude?
I think that their vision for Magic, and I think it started, it's hard to nail exactly when, but I definitely think this applies to Zendikar Rising and Core 2021, and probably Ikoria. I think their vision for Magic is this never-ending mid-range like battle where every card draws more cards, has more function, has more chapter, has more mode.
Yeah.
And some of the lands in this cycle, some of the strongholds might fit into that because that's what they do. But this one gives kind of a mediocre creature ability, and it's amazing. If this tapped for a colorless and entered the battlefield untapped, I would be like, we're going to play this in a Conclave Mentor deck. We're going to play this with Vorinclex. Why not? But can't do it now.
If it tapped for green and you just had to pay some cost, like some conditional cost to do it, then I also think it would be a consideration. But yeah, so anyway, bit of a shame on this one. We'll see if the other ones are worth playing. Now, this next card, CGB, I'm going to have you read, and I just know that you've been a lightning rod for people asking you about this question, asking you about this card. So, so I'm excited to hear you read it for us.
2 and a blue sorcery is called Raven Form. This is a common, and you exile target artifact or creature. Its controller creates a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying, and this card has Foretell for a single blue. So, in the mind of some, this is a 1 blue exile target artifact or creature, and then they have a bird at sorcery speed. What do you think?
I think that last thing you said at sorcery speed is like the real killer of this card for me. Okay, so it is a versatile answer in blue. Some blue decks are definitely going to want this in their 75. In certain best of one meta games, you might even run 1, maybe 2 copies of these in your main deck. The kind of decks I can imagine being in for this are like your Dimir control deck in Standard that wants to have an answer to like a Great Henge or something like that. Now, maybe there are already just better ways to try to deal with that problem, like removal and counter magic. But that's the kind of deck that I can see wanting for a card like this. Otherwise, I just really don't imagine it's going to show up.
So I agree with you completely. I think that you nailed it. There are spots where exiling an artifact is big game that some color combinations haven't had access to, and that is kind of new in the color pie is a lie theme, that we're exiling artifacts with blue cards now and turning them into birds. And I think this card is okay. I don't think it's a 4 of in all your blue decks like people are giving it some hype in where I go. I think that the Foretell cost, just having to spend your second turn exiling it, is pretty bad. I think that for 3 mana, sometimes that's okay, but it's sorcery speed, so you're priced into the play. And I think that if the ideal situation is that you're not under pressure of any kind on turn 2, you Foretell, and then sometime later in the game you double spell. You exile somebody's really awesome thing, and you still have mana open to deal with something else. And that's good. So I think it's a role player 2 of or a sideboard card.
I think this is the kind of thing where, like, if we start to see like a deck like Mono Green Food, I think is a good example. If a deck like that's really running rampant in the format, then there might be blue decks that are really happy to have access to this card. Just like deal with your Troll King, right? Deal with some other kind of heavy hitting recursive threats, stuff like that. But it's just like, I don't know. Other colors have better exile removal. So yeah, so this fills in the gaps, right? That's what it does.
Yep.
Next card, the Trickster God's Heist. 2 black, blue for an enchantment saga at uncommon. Chapter 1, you may exchange control of 2 target creatures. Chapter 2, you may exchange control of 2 target non-basic, non-creature permanents that share a card type. Chapter 3, target player loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. So definitely some trickery going on here, CGB. What does this card bring to mind for you?
It's extremely situational. It reminds me a bit of the Akroan War in that you needed a meta that was about creature sizing, and then for Chapter 2 to be relevant, you have the large creature as well as your own creatures to block their creatures, and you needed a way to sacrifice, and the meta lined up just right for the Akroan War. And for me, I don't know how I'm going to get into a place where we both have creatures, we both have... the easiest part is for me to have a non-basic, non-creature permanent, which is the heist itself. That matters. You can give the opponent the heist and steal their enchantment. But I don't know what enchantment I'm stealing.
Yeah.
And especially in the case of stealing like a saga, like say everybody's running sagas and you steal their saga, a lot of the new sagas are front-loaded, right? The best effect is early.
Exactly.
So you don't even get all of it. It's...
Yeah, our enchantments these days are really having like ETB effects and not so much just having like pervasive effects like we used to see from our enchantments in Magic. So I totally agree. It's worse for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I see it as a meta card that I can't envision the meta that's right. But maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
I don't know.
So here was the first thing. I think this might have some combo potential, and the first card that stood out to me as a potential combo with this would be Wishclaw Talisman. So hear me out with this. Chapter 1 is probably just a staying alive kind of a thing. Maybe you make some tokens, you try to steal one of your opponent's creatures. That's just to keep the game flowing. Chapter 2, with the trigger on the stack, you activate your Wishclaw Talisman. You search up for whatever, maybe a combo piece, a finisher, whatever it is. Your opponent gets control of the talisman. It is tapped, and then you trade it back to yourself for like a treasure, perhaps, or any other random artifact you have lying around. And then, I don't know, like maybe that's just not good enough, but that was the first place that my mind went for how we could try to actually abuse a card like this.
That's cool. I just don't know when you had time to get a creature and an artifact and the Wishclaw Talisman and the Trickster God's Heist onto the battlefield.
I mean, I'm with you, man. It's definitely a long shot.
Yeah, I think it's too narrow.
Here's another shame about this card. I think this card would have been better in like a War of the Spark meta, for example, because that was a format in which you could conceivably do something like drop a Narset, tick Narset down a couple of times, and then like trade this for your opponent's Nissa or like really good Planeswalker later in the game.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
That's kind of one of the, like we have a meta that just doesn't have that many non-creature permanents flying around that are actually good to be trading for. So
yeah, I do think one of the best things you said that now is in my head is I'm going to try to figure out how to trade a treasure for a Great Henge, skip the Wishclaw nonsense. But I think if I can trade a treasure for a Great Henge, I'm doing it.
I think treasure makes this card more playable, right? So yeah, and definitely with decks like Gruul around, where you pretty consistently are going to nab an important creature plus an important artifact, I think that's pretty gas. The only problem is if this card becomes a regular sideboard juke, then people will start to play around it, and then anyway. But yeah, cool card, cool design. I'll toss this one to you. Our next Planeswalker on the list, CGB.
Tyvar Kell. 2 green legendary Planeswalker Tyvar. Elves you control have tap for a black, 3 loyalty on the Planeswalker. +1. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target elf. Untap it. It gains Death Touch until end of turn. 0. Create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. -6. You get an emblem. With whenever you cast an elf spell, it gains haste until end of turn, and you draw 2 cards. What do you think?
I'm like medium on this card. Medium to low.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I am very low on this and elves in general, but I think there's still a deck, and I'm going to throw it at you a piece at a time. Because what's the best... Okay, there are 4 lines of abilities on this card. I'm of the opinion that the -6, assuming there were no cost, assuming you just had one of these, I'm assuming the -6 is the best. Do you agree?
Yeah, in a vacuum.
Yep, elves gain haste, and you draw 2 cards per elf. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds fairly game-winning.
The deck I have in mind revolves around a certain card we talked about before, Vorinclex, so that you get the -6 right away.
Yeah.
Or this ramps you into Vorinclex.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Vorinclex is a hell of a drug, man.
The +1 is also, like, it's good with Vorinclex,
Gets
but
better.
obviously I don't want the +1 if I have this card. I
Right.
want the -6. So that's the best I can do. I think that the elves in general aren't ready for standard or close from what I've seen, but I think Vorinclex... I think it's an elf deck that's not an elf deck. It's a Vorinclex deck. That's what I have in my head.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. It's a decent idea, especially if we have elves that are kind of powerful and interesting on their own and not relying on you just having like a million random elves. Like more of a combo thing. I see this card, like you said, it has like some kind of combo potential. I do think, all right, so this card would be a lot better if we had a Llanowar elves in the format. Because like being able to have random mana dorks that helps you power this out that you can untap and either, I mean, of course, all your elves now tap for black mana, but you could untap it and tap it for green as well. Or you could just have it as a blocker, like a death touch blocker. That would be really gas to me.
Yes.
It turns your kind of dorky utility elves who already gave you some value into like important players while you continue to tick this thing up and hopefully get to the ultimate. So that's pretty awesome. The problem is I haven't seen any 1-mana elves that are going to be playable, and in like lacking those, I just don't know that this card can necessarily get there.
Yeah, the closest, like I was going to say, we didn't even have many 2-mana elves left, and now there's a 2-mana 2/2 that untaps target snowland, and it's an elf. So that's as close as we have to just getting to play this on turn 3 and ramp from there. But I do agree, I want better elves, which is why I don't think I can just build around this as an elf card.
Reprint Llanowar elves, you cowards.
Please don't.
Or don't, yeah.
Okay, this is another tangent I have all the time now in standard. Green has the best 3 1-drops.
Yeah.
It has Gilded Goose, Lovestruck Beast, and Edgewall Innkeeper. Those, like, name a better 1-drop in standard.
Yeah.
Thieves Guild Enforcer, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, you're right. It's just, I don't know. Green just continuing to be some of the best thing you can do at every point on the curve. I guess it's my turn. Culvery, God of Kinship, 2 green.
It's your turn. It's like you lost a bet with the amount of text you have to read on this sucker. Have fun.
Having fun, I will not with this card, but but anyway. All right, so 2 green for a 2/4 legendary creature god at rare. It is a flip card. We'll read the front side. It's a legendary creature god. Did I say that? As long as you control 3 or more legendary creatures, Culvery gets +4/+2 and has vigilance. And you can pay 1 and a green and tap it. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a legendary creature card from among them. Put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. The backside of this card is the Ringheart Crest. 1 and a green for a legendary artifact. As the Ringheart Crest enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Tap to add green. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type or a legendary creature spell. So basically, I feel like this card just wasted a bunch of my time.
Really? No enthusiasm for
I am not a buyer on this card,
no?
dude. I'm really not.
Really?
Yeah. Like, which part of this feels worth the mana at any point?
Honestly, worth the mana is such a loaded term.
All right. If Culvery was like a 2-drop 1/3 on the front side and maybe didn't get buffed quite as much, we'd maybe be talking. But like spending 4 mana on the front side of this thing, I hate it.
I mean, here's the thing. The front side isn't going to be good unless it's a 6/6. Right?
I mean, you're right. Like we're starting to have the conversation as a 6/6.
So, in order to play that, you need to play 2 more legendary creatures on turns 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So, I mean, that's like where you're warming up. And then assuming the opponent kills one or something like that to turn it off, you have the one in a green to look at your top 6 and try to find another. It's also pretty cool that if this does have vigilance, you get to keep looking for more because you can attack and then use the ability. So you get to do both. The artifact is actually a part that I like because I don't know. I'm guessing if you're playing a bunch of legendary cards, you're really going to want to have a lot of mana because they're not known for their cheapness. So I'm feeling the legend. I think casting this as the mana rock on turn 2 is going to happen more than casting the front side.
This card came so close to being decent. If the Ringheart Crest didn't have the limitation that it has, I think this card would definitely be fine. The problem is you can't use this to activate any ability. You can't use this mana for anything except casting specifically a creature spell of the chosen type. And that just,
I mean, we're talking a 30 plus creature deck then to get even in the ballpark. That's true. But you want that anyway, right? Because that's what the front side is too. So I think our real issue shouldn't be with this card. It should be with, does that deck even exist?
This isn't a card that needs a little help. This is a card that needs like the entire rest of the deck built for it already. And even then, it's not like a total guarantee. So
yeah, five color gods. Is it a deck? No, I do feel like a lot of the reveals. I feel like this is a commander set disguised as a standard set, and I think this. So you're going to get a lot of these kind of payoffs that would work in commander and won't work in standard, and I think this is one of them.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, this is a very interesting card for Commander for sure. Next up, Sculptor of Winter. Read it for us, CGB.
We kind of mentioned this card when I talked about Tyvar. It's a Sculptor of Winter, 1 in a green, 2/2, snow creature, elf rogue, tap, untap target snow land.
This card was like close to being good, interesting, playable until we reached the snow part of it. Like, couldn't we just have, like, this card say, like, untap target land?
You still mad at snow?
I mean, I'm mad at it because it's ruining my good cards, man.
I think the elf deck is a snow deck.
You think so? Okay.
I think there's a couple pieces of payoff that make it that way. So I'm okay with the snowness. As we established in a previous show, you are old boomer who yells and is mad about snow. I am new wave enlightened thinker who is fine with snow, and that's okay.
Couldn't it have just untapped any land, though?
Yeah, it could. But it didn't. Couldn't base camp enter the battlefield untapped?
Thanks, I hate it. All right, so assuming your deck is a snow deck that plays like basically all snow lands, is this card playable?
Are you running Tyvar Kell? I mean, do you need an elf? Because I think that if you don't need elves, this card is not playable. I think the body isn't good enough. I think it's a bone crusher target. I think you need to get paid for elves. I don't think it's enough to get paid for just a 2/2 that makes a mana.
Yeah, that's fair. The only interesting thing to note is that, you know, this does tap for whatever color of mana you currently have on the battlefield. So that's a thing. And if we have a snow land that has like some other interesting ability that you might want to use twice, then we could maybe be talking. But I'm not sure I've seen any of that so far.
Me either.
Yeah, but keep in mind, any snow land ever in Magic can get untapped with this. So if there is one with some kind of cool tap ability, then maybe this goes up in value.
The boomers are yelling about scrying sheets.
Which I've heard of that card, but I just assume it's busted, whatever. All right, next up we have Cosmo's Charger. Probably another card CGB's chat's been trying to get him on board with. 3 in a blue for a rare creature horse spirit. 3/3 flash flying. Foretelling cards from your hand cost 1 less colorless mana and can be done on any player's turn. This costs foretell 2 and a blue, and of course you foretell it for the cost of 2 generic mana. So 3/3 flash flyer for 3 and or 4 mana the turn you cast it, which makes the rest of your foretell cards cheaper. I'm imagining you're not that stoked about this card, CGB, but tell me what you're thinking.
I'm trying to come around to it. I've slowly come around to some of the foretell cards like Behold the Multiverse and Saw It Coming, the Counterspell, and the Glimmer of Genius.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to consider places where they would be good instead of being appalled that I have to take turn 2 off to set them up. And I'm getting there. And Cosmos Charger, like, if those cards are that good, and if the other foretell card that we just talked about that turns things into birds, if that's actually good, Cosmos Charger isn't a joke. Assuming that you're just able to flash it in and the opponent doesn't see it coming and it doesn't remove it, and you untap with it, you could have, like, very, very cheap, very, very cheap stuff going on. And at flash speed, it's not terrible, but I still think it's too much setup and not enough payoff. Cost reduction is good, but I wanted an Edgewall Innkeeper or a Lucky Clover for foretell, and this isn't quite it.
Yeah, and it's just like a 3/3 body's just not that resilient or impressive. So
exactly,
fairly easy to kill. For me, the most interesting part of this is foretelling on the opponent's turn.
Yes.
If we can lock that in, like, it's approaching busted in a deck that has good foretell cards.
I did figure this out, though. When you foretell a card, you have to cast it on a different turn. So you can't foretell something and then cast it on the same turn. So if, like, it's your opponent's turn and it's their end step and you decide, well, they didn't do anything, I'm going to pay to foretell my Saw It Coming for a future turn, and then they cast something in response, you can't play the Saw It Coming.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep, that's a good point. So it's really good for those sorcery speed spells that you want to lay away for future turns.
I think people are also going to say, then just do that on your turn instead. Yeah, if you do it on your turn and the opponent responds again to you doing that, you can't play it. Like, you're locked out either way.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the ability here is as good as it looks.
You're spending mana on your turn, which if you're playing like a flash foretell deck, you don't want to do. So Anyway, yeah, this is the kind of card where I don't see you like curving out into this card. I see you like resolving this card on turn 6 and then starting to do some other stuff, kind of a thing. The sum of its parts is still not looking that great to me, so I'm going to take some convincing. I do think that there are several approaching busted play patterns you could get into with a card like this, but call me a skeptic for now.
Agree.
Aha! Okay, read this next card for us, CGB. I'm excited about this card.
Really? That's the one you want me to read with? Okay. Seize the Spoils is 2 and a red sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards, and create a treasure.
It's back, baby! What was this card called in Ixalan?
Pirate's Pillage?
Yeah, something like that.
But it was 4 mana and you got 2 treasures?
Yeah. So, what do you think about the tweaking of the numbers on this card?
What are you excited about? This is Tormenting Voice, and you get, but it's 3 mana and you get 1 of the mana back.
Yeah.
So it's Tormenting Voice. That's slower.
Yeah.
It's Tormenting Voice on a worse turn. Like, what do you want from me here? I am confused.
Okay. I'm not necessarily saying that this card's going to be like some big player in Standard.
Oh, good. I'd have to leave.
But I really liked that Pirate's Pillage card, and there were cool things that you could do, like these spells start to get busted if you have any way to double them. Like, another combo I really liked was the 1,000-Year Storm with the Pirate's Pillage kind of card. You start just going off with stuff like that. So if you can figure out any way to abuse this, then it's pretty gas. I also think that if you're playing a deck which A, really wants to generate treasure and or go big, and B, has like specific combo cards that you're digging for, then this can definitely be a consideration. So again, I'm not saying this is just gonna slot right into a bunch of red decks, but I don't know. This is like the kind of like jank enabler card that I love.
This card will never be played in a competitive tournament.
Okay. I'll take you on that one.
Okay, to be clear, like a champ, like one that is like you have to win a thing to get into.
However, I wager that this card will show up and be a staple in at least one really fun ladder deck.
You got 100% played on this particular exchange, because not only did you have me read this absolutely pointless card, Seize the Spoils, but now you have to read the next card.
Okay, I accept my penance. All right, another just random green god. Here we go. Esika, God of the Tree, 1 green. Legendary creature god at Mythic. It is a 1/4 with Vigilance. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. Other legendary creatures you control have Vigilance, and tap, add 1 mana of any color. But wait, there's more. On the back side, this is an enchantment, a legendary enchantment. It's called the Prismatic Bridge. It costs a Niv Mizzet Reborn, so 1 of each color of mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature or planeswalker card. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is just slotting again into that like god tribal rando deck. I'm just having trouble with this card, man. Like,
really?
I have a hard time seeing this showing up in standard. Yeah.
Which part?
I mean, either side, to be honest. All right, so here's the thing. The backside's good. Good card. I'd love to have that on the battlefield in front of me. Why not? It's kind of slow, dies to ECD, dies to enchantment hate. It's just not necessarily, like, you don't get paid on it until the next upkeep. So just, kind of a number of do-nothing weaknesses around the Prismatic Bridge, and you have to be able to afford it. Now, of course, this deck is really set up to be able to let you afford this card consistently, but it's still a thing. Getting all 5 colors of mana is a challenge no matter how hard you are trying. And then the front side is just like a 1/4 for 3 that taps for mana is not super impressive. So like, in order for this card to even be good, you had to have already maybe like a Fibblethip in play, right? Or some like cheap legendary to kind of help you get paid on it immediately. I just, again, this just seems like the last one we read. It seems super conditional and not particularly powerful on its own.
Okay. I will let the shields down. I agree that this is probably a commander card and another trap hidden in our standard set. And I think that it would have a lot more potential if it actually weren't a creature on the front face, because here's the thing. You can try to set up a deck to abuse this, like say your only creature is Vorinclex and you run a ton of sagas or something like that, where getting free Vorinclex just is the end of the game, right? You do such powerful things that they can't beat you. But this card is a creature, a legendary creature itself, so if you put 4 of this in your deck, there's a good chance that your Prismatic Bridge is going to hit another one of these. Wow. So instead, what it pays you is you have to assume that you need to make the front side good, because you can't outright abuse the backside. So if you have to make the front side good, you have to run a lot of legendary creatures, which means they fit a lot of different casting costs to use the mana, which makes the backside worse because you're less likely to hit something as huge and impactful as you want to. So it's hard to build a deck that consistently pays you in a big way for the card. And I think that's what's going to hold it back in standard.
I mean, I totally agree with everything you said. Here's another problem with this particular ability on this card. It's kind of like, imagine if this said, if this was a giant and it said other giants in your deck have tap, add 1 mana of any color, right? But the thing is, you're running a deck full of giants. The reason you run a deck full of giants is because they're frickin' giants. The whole point of it is that those giants are supposed to be like having a massive impact on the board and like killing your opponent. And okay, legendary creatures don't always do that, but like, I have to assume that the whole reason that we're running God Tribal is that gods are powerful and gods are like have plenty of important things to do on their own, not just be like some 4-mana god that tap to add another mana for you, right? So I'm just not quite sure what we're doing about this. Like, we really do. It's like if your deck's not just be running a bunch of Fibble Thips, I don't really know why you're in for this card.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is going to be a sweet commander card and not much of a standard card, unless, and remember, we're still not seeing the whole set, unless the 5-color god deck is actually busted.
Yeah.
They give us like some Fibblethip types or just awesome bodies at 1 and 2 mana that are legendary, and we are just, all right, 5-color legends, let's go.
Yeah. Other things to note are like, let's say we have a creature that untaps, like an effect that untaps all of our creatures, right? Or like some other way that we can start comboing off or abusing this. Like, now we're talking, but just on its face, it's really unimpressive, I think. All right, speaking of unimpressive, let's move on to this next legendary, which you get to read, CGB.
You don't want me to read Snow-Covered Plains? I was getting used to a life where I didn't have to read very much. It was going well for me. Anyway, the card that I have to read now is Koma Cosmos Serpent, 3 green, blue, legendary creature serpent. This spell can't be countered. It is a 6/6. At the beginning of each upkeep, there's more commander stuff in our standard set. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Koma's Coil. Sacrifice another serpent. Choose one. Tap target permanent. Its activated abilities can't be activated this turn. Or Koma Cosmos Serpent gains indestructible until end of turn. This is so the fact that it triggers each upkeep means that on the face, you are spending 7 mana, and if it survives until the next turn, which let's assume that you didn't just play this into a Heartless Act, if it survives till the next turn, you get a 3/3 blue serpent, so it's like 9/9 worth of stats, can't be countered, and you've got all these little abilities such as potential indestructibility and tapping things down. What do you think?
I mean, is this what 7 mana buys us at Mythic these days?
Are you not impressed?
Are you not entertained?
If it survives another turn, you have 12 stats for that 7 mana.
Yeah. I mean, remember
You're not into it?
Remember when we could just cast Nissa?
I guess, but Nissa had a jellyfish with it. Is this for 7 mana? Would you rather have the 5/5 flying Hydroid Krasis and 2 cards and 2 life, or would you rather have this?
You're just baiting me, bro.
Okay, but what do you have of this card? Do you think it's just an overpriced, not going to happen?
I think this card is terrible.
Terrible.
I think this card is terrible.
Okay.
I would rather play.
I wouldn't call it terrible.
I would rather play almost any other card in my Simic deck.
So you are Seize the Spoils, yes. Koma Cosmos Serpent, hell no.
Dude, yeah. If you think this card is more playable than Seize the Spoils, we are gonna have something to fight about on this podcast.
I think this card is much more likely to show up somewhere.
Here's my problem with this card, right? A 6/6 for 7 is like about as laughably understated as a card can get in Magic these days in general, right?
I just told you it's a 9/9 for 7.
It's just not, bro.
Okay.
All right. So the next thing is it makes 3/3s on the upkeep, which is fine. I mean, that's a good ability. It's a strong ability. I'd definitely be happy if any of my cards on the battlefield had that ability. But it's hardly the most impressive thing to have to wait until your next upkeep to get one of those. And then furthermore, are you really going to want to sacrifice one of those to tap a permanent? Like, that's a pretty heavy cost. Like, make a 3/3 and then sack it just to tap something down. And then, okay, the indestructible clause, like, yeah, that's somewhat interesting. If you got a serpent right away, that would be interesting. You know, because, like, okay, can't be countered, makes a serpent on ETB, and now you can make it indestructible immediately. That would be, like, now we're starting to maybe be talking about something, but I'm just highly unimpressed with this card.
I mean, it's any serpent. Just play a serpent on turn 6.
Oh, yeah, Serpent Tribal.
I'm sure there's some really good ones out there.
This goes right into an algae tribal deck, man.
A changeling will do it?
A changeling, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, that's actually something I didn't even think of with the card before, but yeah, a changeling is something that you could throw away to the Koma to use the ability. I think the card might have a deck in a match where it's good, but I mean, I'd rather play a Genesis Ultimatum, of course.
I would, like, give me any other 7 mana card in these colors. I would rather play it in my deck. That's a bold claim.
I
don't care what it is, man. I would rather play the frickin' mammoth than this thing.
I can right now think of some cards in this set that will test that theory.
Okay. Bring them on. I look forward to it.
I'm like a one of coma in a sideboard somewhere guy. That's about the height though that I see for it. And a sweet commander card, of course.
If your opponent's playing like mono blue counterspell, okay, you play this card and you got him, right? But then they just turn it into a bird, so whatever. All right, next card here. Ooh, okay. This one I definitely want to talk about. The World Tree. Read this for us, CGB.
This is a land. It is not a legendary land, to be clear. In case anybody wants to talk about how it may or may not be legendary with a name like the World Tree, let's just say it is not legendary and make that clear.
This is for all those mages out there who haven't yet encountered this card and had an aneurysm over it.
Okay. Yeah, just trigger warning. The World Tree, the not legendary World Tree, enters the battlefield tapped. That's the new name of the card. It's the not legendary
World Tree. We should call it that World Tree. that
World
one
Tree
over there.
That's perfect. That World Tree enters the battlefield tapped. Tap for a green. As long as you control 6 or more lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Wooburg twice and a tap. AKA white, white, blue, blue, black, black, red, red, green, green.
Double Niv Mizzet.
Double Niv Mizzet, tap. Sacrifice that World Tree. Search your library for any number of god cards. Put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library.
Woo, what a card.
Is this card broken?
Maybe. Here's what I think should really be raising people's eyebrows about this card is that third line of text. As long as you control 6 or more lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. That's an ability to have on your land. That's basically a chromatic lantern you got for free, and the only price you had to pay was that it ETB tapped.
So I actually had a lot of people in my chat, so there might be people listening to this who get this wrong, that thought that this meant that you tapped your land and you got 2 mana, 1 of the regular color and 1 of any color.
Oh, well, that would truly
and that
be
is
broken.
Not the case. Yeah, that is not the case. I just want to stress that.
Yeah.
You can either tap it for what it normally does, or you can tap it to make a mana of any color. The issue I have with that is that you have to have 6 or more lands to access that ability.
It's true.
And it is pretty free, but you have to play a tap land, which we've talked about the value of a tap land. I don't understand why you need to keep fixing mana at 6 mana or more. Like, by then, you better have the colors to do what your deck does. Like, I don't see the value.
Well, I mean, I think the theory here is that it's enabling your 5-color shenanigans, right?
When you have 6 or more lands, I just don't see how when you have 6 or more lands, you need to enable your 5-color shenanigans. You need to be enabling your 5-color shenanigans on turns 2 and 3. And, you know.
I mean, how much 5-color have you played, CGB?
I have played a lot. I played it in the beginning, a deck called 5-color green that had winter frickin' orb and didn't have anything that cost more than 4 mana. And you start your color fixing with Birds of Paradise, buddy. I was there when they were written, or whatever the meme is.
All I'll say is I've played a lot of Niv Mizzet Reborn, and I've run into mana issues at every phase of that deck, right? Because I totally agree, like, it's not hard to generate the mana you need to, like, cast your Niv Mizzet, right? Or to cast your whatever. But what gets tricky is you get to these points in the game where you like, your deck is full of color-intensive stuff, and you have these turns where you're like, okay, I really want to cast this removal spell that takes black, and I really want to cast this double black legendary badass whatever it was that I got, right? And you run into these very, very awkward turns. Or, like, you have these moments where you're like, OMG, I just for some reason, can't seem to actually cast my ultimatum this turn, or I can't seem to cast my casualties of war this turn, just from the way that things panned out with my deck, right? So I think that, I don't know, I feel like you're kind of underselling the challenge that some of these decks run into.
Yep, because I think they just got to be smarter.
Okay.
Play better mana bases, tools.
CGB's like, get good, weaklings.
Get good, noobs. I mean, they're the best people to sell a new rare card to, you know what I mean?
All right. So I guess this is where I become the zoomer and CGB becomes the cranky magic boomer.
I guess.
So, all right, so how epic do we think that this last ability has the potential to be then?
Oh, this is a broken, absolute nonsense game-winning ability in Commander.
Dude.
Yes.
I mean, this in any deck that you can activate this.
This isn't going to happen, and this isn't a feature of tournament Magic. And yes, I'm aware there's a card in the set that turns everything into a god.
You say that, CGB, okay? Mm-hmm. You say that. However, can I interest you in this card and the gold, what is it called? Gold Shimmer Dragon or whatever?
You can try. What do you need? There are 4 treasures.
If you have those 2 cards in your deck, you could reliably activate this ability on turn 6.
On turn 6?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Assuming that your dragon lived, how much work?
Assuming the dragon lived, but even if it didn't, it made treasure, right?
All right, what gods are you getting?
1 to 2 treasure. What gods are you getting? Any god you felt like putting in your deck. I mean...
Right, so which of these gods is just... I mean, somebody's going to say, you get Perforos and, 7 other gods. It's like, that deck sounds horrible to me.
You don't need to, is the thing. I'll grant you that you do actually have to have a deck full of gods that you might cast on curve that might make sense. Okay, so I'm totally with you there. But can I interest you in Klothys? It's a very playable god.
Sideboard card.
Yeah, but I mean, if you can get it for free, it's worth putting.
It's not free. Deck. It's 11 mana, and you had a tap land earlier in the game.
I mean, we're gonna have to look at the rest of the gods.
There are some good ones. Hey,
Valky's a very playable god. I'm not gonna turn my nose up at that.
I'd be much more impressed if you could play the Tybalt side for 11 mana.
We'll get there, man.
Okay. I mean, put me down as an absolute no to this in Constructed and an absolute 100% yes to Casual and Commander, but not competitive play. Okay. That's my take.
I am open to this card being better than it looks. And I don't think that the cost, for all of the potential upside, I don't think that the cost is that severe. So, I mean, I hear everything you're saying, man. This is definitely a wacky card. It's definitely possible that it might do nothing. But, damn, there are a lot of possibilities with this card. And it is simply a land. So, keep an eye on it. Let's go straight to a card which I know you've been interested and expecting to see coming. So, read this for us, CGB.
Saw It Coming is 1 blue instant counter target spell, foretell 1 and a blue. Okay, a lot of people got really excited about this. I was very... not excited because I saw a 3 mana cancel or a 4 mana counter target spell. And I still feel that way to an extent. I'm trying to, like I said before, I'm trying to open my mind up to the foretell, the possibility that foretell might be good. But I think part of it is my experience in Best of One says you don't take turn 2 off, especially on the draw. You just can't do nothing on turn 2 and you'll lose all the time. That's just been my Magic the Gathering arena experience. So every time I see a foretell card, I picture I'm on the draw against a deck that is green or red or white and plays creatures on turns 1 and 2, and I lose that game. And it's kind of hard for me to accept that I would want to play that. So that's why I'm still looking for the Lucky Clover or the Edgewall Innkeeper of foretell. And if I don't get one, I still see this as a 3 mana card. Even though I'm trying really hard to get excited about it for the for the purpose of it is like one of the smuggest cards ever printed, and it just goes with my theme so well. Oh, man, I want to like it.
I mean, it is a very streamable card, I will give you that. All right. Here's several things about this card that don't immediately jump out. The first thing I love about this card is that at 4 mana or later, you can cast this for 1 blue. So in those times, and I know that you know that this happens, right? Where you're playing a 2-color or even a 3-color control deck, and you just happen to not get that second blue. So there might actually be times when, like on turn 4, you are laying this away for 2 and then casting it the next turn on your opponent's turn with that remaining blue mana. So that's interesting.
I really want to make a joke that goes back to the World Tree about you just have to get good and draw the right lands. But but you're right. This is a thing. It happens. Happens to all of us, okay?
I've played enough control decks to know that getting that double blue, like, because here's the problem, right? Your deck wants the double blue on turn 3 and the double white on turn 4, and you get in that real rock and a hard place with it, man, where you're having to make those tough calls with your Maze Mind Tome. So that's one cool thing about this. Here's another scenario in which I can see this card being quite good. In a long control mirror, I know you're used to this, CGB, where you're having to make suboptimal plays on some of your turns because you don't want to discard to hand size. So in a long control mirror, on 5 mana or whatever that turn is where you start kind of stacking up and waiting for your opponent to do things, you can just start laying away your counter spells, and then later when you have like that wild counter spell chain going on, all of yours cost 2. So okay, maybe you'd just rather bring in Mystical Dispute instead of Saw It Coming in that matchup. But, I mean, how compelling do you find that? Because I could see this card being a real breaker in control mirrors.
Yeah, as long as I'm drawing multiple cards a turn and hitting my land drops. Like, if I'm missing a land drop and I'm dodging my discard step by foretelling, I'm probably going to end up losing because land drops are so important. But if we're using Behold the Multiverse, which is a card draw spell with Foretell, and we overdraw our hand, then yeah, Saw It Coming creating, Foretell creating a sort of extra hand is not a joke. That's pretty important, and it alludes to one thing I will give this card that I think you were getting to, or at least you're on that track, where it dodges hand hate, which is one of the oldest tricks in the book of I'm just going to wait. Yep, I'm just going to wait till I have duress and then my big spell to make sure it resolves. And this gets around it.
Yeah. So I see this card being frustratingly difficult to play around in a number of matchups. And I don't know. It could curve very nicely depending on the other things that your deck wants to be doing or depending on the certain inflection points in the format. I think this is definitely not a card to write off. And I think that this could end up being, this is my hot take. This is a hot take, but bear with me. I think this could be the Mystical Dispute of our new format moving forward. It's not going to replace Mystical Dispute, but this could be like, it could sit in that spot of a card that we thought was going to be somewhat playable that ends up being surprisingly playable in a lot of matchups.
If that happens, you get to be there, sitting there with that look on your face saying, I saw it coming.
Saw it coming! And if not, everyone will forget this episode and no one will ever speak of it again. And that's a good place for us to leave it for this one. Tune in later in the week to get more in the continuation of this series. Bye for now.